Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Paul, Canadian Snowman, and we're back again, once again, with Epic History TV's Napoleon. And we're on the Napoleon's Vietnam, which obviously, when the United States was in Vietnam, it didn't go very well. So obviously, this probably ain't going to go very well. Also, seeing that in the comments, I said I remember saying last video that it's his last like victory, like, oh man, it's his last victory. But apparently you guys, because you guys are awesome, said it was his last campaign, which means it's not his last victory. It wasn't last, like, I guess, winning battle, but it was his last campaign. So, or last winning campaign, I should say. uh so yeah, which gives me excitement for the future then, because that's obviously we get to see some more like creative genius by Napoleon, and his tactics and all that stuff. This isn't the end, so I'm really looking forward to that. What else is going on? Yeah, so looks like we're gonna head to not Vietnam, to Spain, and it's like he's gonna get bogged down. I'm assuming we're gonna see like a bunch of guerrilla tactics. I don't know if we're gonna see a big battles or not, but I mean, this is epic history. They're gonna put some battles together, right? I just remember, like, Vietnam was kind of like those like hit and run kind of battles most of the time, you know. But anyways, please hit the like and subscribe, guys. Please and thank you. And excuse me. And we'll get to this video. Dun, dun, dun. Full screen. And if you're first time watching, you should totally go back, because we've done like all the Napoleon videos, and so definitely check those out too. Also done Alexander the Great, and also have done what is the Crusades? That's it. Almost forgot. This war is my downfall.
In 1809, Napoleon Bonaparte, Emperor of the French, was at the height of his power. He had just won another crushing victory against Austria at Wagram and imposed a humiliating peace treaty. But the war he'd started in Spain and Portugal, with his ill-judged invasion the previous year, continued to rage.
Yeah, because like his alliance with Spain at first, it wasn't great, but at least it was an alliance. At least he didn't have them. At least he wasn't at war with them. Like, he just has so many troops in his area. Just think about it, if he didn't have all these troops in Spain and was able to use it to conquer elsewhere. I just, you'd wonder what else he could have done. But like I said, bad judgment. Just a bad decision. Anyways.
Ill-judged invasion the previous year continued to rage. Napoleon had placed his own brother Joseph on the Spanish throne, uniting a proud country against him. His troops had dealt ruthlessly with popular uprisings, while routing a succession of Spanish armies. In February 1809, Marshal Lannes overcame the heroic defense of Zaragoza in a brutal siege that cost 54,000 Spanish lives and 10,000 French.
54,000?
But still, the Spanish and Portuguese remained defiant. And 3 months after their escape from Coruña, the British...
But just like 10,000 French killed, like, that's 10,000 French. That could have been over fighting somewhere else, and I'm sure that's just 10,000. A lot more are dying, so just... what could have been, right?
3 months after their escape from Coruña, the British were back. In April, Sir Arthur Wellesley landed in Lisbon to lead a small Anglo-Portuguese army. British redcoats would fight alongside Portuguese troops, who, with the help of British training, would soon prove themselves highly effective. 3 weeks after arriving in Portugal, Wellesley moved against Marshal Soult's Second Corps, which had recently taken Porto. Soult and his troops, preoccupied with plundering the region, had no warning of the British advance, and were soon in headlong retreat, back through the mountains into Spain.
Uh-oh. Spain's country where small armies are defeated in large armies. Okay.
Having secured Portugal for the time being, Wellesley planned a joint campaign with General Cuesta, commanding the Spanish army of Extremadura. On the 10th of July, the two commanders met at Casas de Miravete to discuss strategy. Relations between these two allies were not straightforward. Spain and Britain had a long history of conflict. The Spanish were deeply suspicious of British intentions in Spain, while the British had a low opinion of the Spanish army, which they considered poorly trained and badly led. Wellesley's request to take over command of Spanish forces was rejected, but the generals agreed to a joint advance up the Tagus Valley towards Madrid, to be supported by General Venegas, advancing from La Mancha. In the face of their advance, Marshal Victor's First Corps withdrew to Talavera, where he was joined by King Joseph and General Sebastiani's Fourth Corps. The French plan was for Joseph's army to defend Madrid, while Marshal Soult led 3 corps down from the north to get behind and trap the Anglo-Spanish forces.
Makes sense.
But Joseph, worried by Soult's slow progress and General Venegas's advance on Madrid, decided to attack at Talavera.
All right.
This video is brought to you by our sponsor, CuriosityStream, home of more than 2,500 documentaries exploring themes such as science, technology, docs on Rome, the Middle Ages.
Oh, wait.
The Battle of Talavera saw British infantry bear the brunt of the French epic HistoryTV, and sign up and you'll get your first 30 days free. Thanks to CuriosityStream for sponsoring this video.
Woo! Wow.
The Battle of Talavera saw British infantry bear the brunt of the French assault. They stood firm and repelled the enemy with disciplined musket fire and bayonet charges. Talavera was a small battle compared to the great clashes fought that year in Austria, but it
I just want to say, like, I just like always love like a French. I love watching those kind of movies, just old or TV shows, old school, just the British against the French. I just think of like all like the enemies in history, like the British versus the French, always seems to pop up, and I don't know, like just the biggest rivals through history. They like respect each other so much or hate each other so much or whatever, and I just think that just a very cool dynamic. Anyways.
compared to the great clashes fought that year in Austria. But it proved that under Wellesley, Britain's small, well-drilled army was a force to be reckoned with, even though in the short term, victory achieved little. Warned of Soult's approach from captured dispatches, the victorious Anglo-Spanish army retreated, while King Joseph and Fourth Corps marched against Venegas's army, which they smashed at the Battle of Almonacid.
Damn. You're running away.
That autumn, the Supreme Junta in Seville, Free Spain's effective government, raised two new armies for another attempt to liberate Madrid, planning to converge on the capital from north and south.
This is like armies just popping up everywhere. Like, hey, let's get together to get these guys. Come on, let's go. I mean, man.
From north and south. But Wellesley, ennobled as Viscount Wellington for his victory at Talavera, had been so disgusted by the lack of Spanish cooperation that summer that he refused to risk his army. Predictably, Spain's inexperienced armies met with disaster. At Ocaña, they suffered their biggest defeat of the war, when a smaller force under Marshal Soult routed the Spanish army, taking 14,000 prisoners and 50 cannon.
He'll let the British
A
train
week
them.
later, the army of the left was heavily defeated at Alba de Tormes. There was more bad news when Girona fell to the French after an epic 7-month siege.
French coming on strong.
The Supreme Junta's plans to retake Madrid were in tatters, and southern Spain was now wide open to French attack.
1810, here we go.
In January 1810, King Joseph marched south with an army of 60,000 men. Spanish resistance evaporated. Spain's Supreme Junta was overthrown in a coup as Córdoba and Seville fell without a fight. Joseph, who still hoped to win over the Spanish with his progressive reforms, was welcomed by many as a savior from anarchy.
Huh.
Only Cadiz held out, its defences reinforced by a British naval squadron, and was besieged by Victor's First Corps. Meanwhile, Napoleon sent Marshal Massena to Spain with 65,000 reinforcements. He was reckoned one of Napoleon's best marshals, and had just been made Prince of Essling for his heroics in the recent war against Austria. Massena was to lead a third French invasion of Portugal, take Lisbon and chase the British back into the sea. He laid siege to Ciudad Rodrigo, a fortified city controlling one of the main routes into Portugal, which surrendered after 2 weeks' bombardment. Wellington, with only 33,000 men to face Massena's 50,000, retreated. Massena crossed the Portuguese frontier and besieged Almeida. After just 13 hours of bombardment, a lucky French shot hit the Portuguese magazine. 70 tons of gunpowder went up in a devastating explosion that made all further resistance useless.
Wow.
It was a serious blow to Wellington, who'd been relying on Almeida's strong defences to buy him time. At Busaco, he found a strong defensive position and made a stand. Massena's uphill frontal attack failed, at a cost of 4,000 casualties. But the next day, the French found a way to outflank Wellington's position, and his retreat continued. As Massena's army neared Lisbon, his scouts reported something completely unexpected. Stretching across the Lisbon peninsula, protecting the city from attack, they found a new chain of fortifications in 2 major lines. Known as the Lines of Torres Vedras, the British and Portuguese had been constructing these defences for more than a year. Now the lines bristled with more than 100 forts, redoubts and batteries, manned by 30,000 troops and 250 guns.
The trap?
Massena soon discovered the lines were far too strong for him to attack. What's more, a scorched earth strategy had stripped the surrounding countryside of anything that might help the French. While Portuguese partisans attacked French supply columns as they struggled through the mountains to reach Massena's army. Massena faced a grim predicament. Starved of supplies, too weak to attack,
Retreat.
unwilling to retreat. But throughout this standoff, it was Portuguese peasants who suffered most of all. When their villages and farms were burned, many took refuge in Lisbon, where thousands died of starvation and disease.
Damn. 1811.
Back in France, Napoleon had been preoccupied with his divorce from the Empress Josephine, and then a new marriage to
I'm sorry, like for this whole thing, I was like thinking, like, so when does Napoleon come in here? Do you hope we're like having balls and just, I guess, just relationship troubles? I guess I'm finding out right now.
Occupied with his divorce from the Empress Josephine, and then a new marriage to Archduchess Marie-Louise, daughter of the Emperor of Austria. She was now expecting their first child. Nevertheless, from Paris, Napoleon sent frequent orders to his marshals in Spain and Portugal, urging them to take more aggressive action. But when these orders arrived weeks later, they were usually out of date and showed little understanding of the problems his marshals faced. He now ordered Soult, based in Andalusia, to go on the offensive to draw enemy forces away from Lisbon, so Massena could take the city.
Napoleon needs to come down
Soult
here.
laid siege to Badajoz, a fortified city that controlled the southern route into Portugal. When 12,000 men of the army of Extremadura marched to its relief, they were routed by Soult, after which the city tamely surrendered, giving up 8,000 prisoners and vast quantities of stores. It was another heavy blow to Spain's armed forces.
Wow.
But remarkably, despite such disasters and their many blundering generals, the Spanish troops remained willing to fight, the courage of the rank and file undimmed. Victor's First Corps, besieging Cadiz, had now been so weakened to support other operations that the Anglo-Spanish garrison decided to attack. The Allies landed along the coast to strike at the French siege lines from the rear. But they were ambushed by the French at Barossa. Despite heavy losses, the Anglo-Portuguese rearguard fought off the enemy, but a furious falling out between British commander Sir Thomas Graham and his Spanish counterpart General La Peña threw away any advantage. Soult, alarmed at these developments, marched back to Andalusia. Meanwhile, Massena, out of food and with no prospect of reinforcement, had no option but to retreat.
Yep.
Wellington's army pursued, discovering evidence of several appalling atrocities committed by the French against Portuguese villagers. There were running battles with the French rearguard, brilliantly commanded by Marshal Ney, until he was sacked by Massena for criticizing his leadership. Having chased the French out of Portugal, Wellington besieged Almeida. Massena's army, now rested and reinforced, marched to its aid. The two armies clashed again at Fuentes de Oñoro. In 2 days of heavy fighting, Massena failed to break through Wellington's position to relieve Almeida. The fortress fell the next week, but to Wellington's fury, British bungling allowed most of the French garrison to escape. Massena had lost 25,000 men in Portugal. Now he'd lost Almeida too, and a string of bad decisions, not least to bring his mistress with him on campaign, had cost him the respect of his officers.
Like what?
The Marshal, whom Napoleon had once nicknamed the Dear Child of Victory, was recalled to France.
I was gonna say, like, usually, you're off at war, you got your men and everything, and you bring your girl along. It's like your officers and your soldiers, man. They don't have girls, man. It's like you think that their leader would kind of lead by example, and I don't know, and go through the tough times just like them. I don't know. He's retreating. Come on, dude. You gotta prove yourself.
Nicknamed the Dear Child of Victory, was recalled to France in disgrace, never to hold senior command again.
Oh, wow.
Napoleon sent Marshal Marmont to replace him. Meanwhile, Marshal Beresford, the British commander of Portugal's army, was sent to retake Badajoz with 20,000 British and Portuguese troops. When Soult approached with a relief force, Beresford marched to meet him at Albuera. It was one of the bloody...
I just want to say, like, this whole thing just feels so chaotic. I mean, it's like back and forth up here, back and forth. It kind of feels like a board game. I don't know, everyone's just everywhere, just chasing, until they can't chase anymore, then they retreat. I don't know, it's just very kind of confusing. I mean, not really confusing, it's just chaotic.
marched to meet him at Almeida. It was one of the bloodiest battles of the war. Around 6,000 casualties on each side, with more than a third of the British infantry killed, wounded or captured. Marshal Soult declared,
"There is no beating these troops, in spite of their generals. I always thought they were bad soldiers. Now I'm sure of it. I had turned their right, pierced their center, and everywhere victory was mine. But they didn't know how to run."
Soult had been checked, but he was determined to save Badajoz. The newly arrived Marshal Marmont marched to his aid, and they advanced again. This combined army forced the British to abandon the siege. But when Wellington withdrew to a strong defensive position across the Portuguese border, Soult and Marmont did not pursue. French commanders in Spain had learned grudging respect for Wellington and for the steadiness of his troops. For now, the war in Spain had entered stalemate.
How do you get your troops out of there? Come on, Napoleon, come down, buddy.
While British, French and Spanish armies crisscrossed Spain and Portugal, another war was fought every day in the mountains, hills and woods. From 1808, Spanish and Portuguese civilians, militias and ex-soldiers began taking up arms against the hated French invader. They waged a war of ambushes and hit-and-run raids, known in Spanish as La Guerrilla, the Little War. Its fighters became known in English as guerrillas.
Guerrilla warfare.
Britain's Royal Navy supplied vital weapons, stores and money, often landing them behind enemy lines. Much of Spain's rugged countryside fell under the control of the guerrillas. North of Madrid, Juan Martín Díez, an ex-soldier known as El Empecinado, the Stubborn, led a guerrilla band 6,000 strong.
Wow.
In Navarre, Esposimina, a former peasant, ran a highly organized band that caused havoc for the French, capturing convoys and couriers on the strategic Burgos-Bayonne road, and branding Viva Mina on the forehead of collaborators. While in the west, Julian Sanchez, known as El Charro, led the self-styled Lanceros de Castilla. El Charro himself wore a French hussar's cap, its eagle symbolically turned upside down. There were dozens more bands operating across Spain, though a few were no better than bandits, terrorizing civilians as often as the enemy. The guerrilla war was merciless, marked by hideous atrocities on both sides. A French soldier's greatest fear was to be taken alive by the guerrillas, who often tortured their prisoners before killing them.
Wow.
Tens of thousands of French troops were tied down by this people's war, guarding outposts or patrolling the countryside. The roads were so dangerous for French messengers that they required cavalry escorts of 200 men or more.
What?
Many still didn't get through, their valuable dispatches forwarded to Wellington, for whom they became an invaluable source of intelligence. The war in Spain would ultimately cost the lives of 240,000 French soldiers.
Wow.
As was typical in wars of this era, most died from disease, but more died fighting guerrillas than in battle against the British and Spanish armies. However, it
seemed like, the guerrillas are stopping the messages and the orders, and they're getting their, like I said, the supplies. And like, if you can't communicate, man, like, there's just no way you can't. How you gonna succeed? And they just pop up everywhere. It's not like you can, hunt them down. I mean, it's guerrilla warfare. It's, they just, it's, wow. It's a lot of men. 240.
However, it was the twin threat, a well-led regular army under Wellington and a popular insurgency, that left the French facing an impossible strategic dilemma. If their armies remained dispersed to fight the guerrillas, Wellington could attack. But if they concentrated to defeat Wellington in battle, huge swathes of the country would quickly fall to the guerrillas. This was Napoleon's Vietnam, or his bleeding ulcer, as he called it, a war that cost his empire an average of 100 casualties every day, with little prospect of victory. And in 1812, as Napoleon launched his gigantic invasion of Russia, Wellington and the guerrillas launched their own offensive that would turn the war in Spain on its head.
Damn.
Thank you.
It's like you have a war on two fronts. It just reminds me, like I said, of Hitler in World War II. You know, he's fighting the English. Hitler was fighting the English, and then the Soviets, and it's kind of like the same thing. Now you got you're fighting Spain, and now you're doing Russia. It's, man, you think that if you just left Spain alone, just like, who cares? Just leave them alone and just have them all over there. What could have been. But yeah, that's just definitely just a pain in the butt. There was no they didn't show us any I guess real battles where it showed each position. It kind of just showed the armies how they moved around the country and everything, which was really neat. I missed that. Did miss having those kind of those battles which kind of showed each side and their companies and everything. I like that stuff a lot. But anyways, yep. Napoleon's Vietnam. Excuse me. Yeah, just a mess. You can't really say much about it. It's just a mess. Just a lot of people dying. Just a lot of people that could have been used to help somewhere else, like I've said. But yeah, definitely another great episode. It definitely was, I guess, very, very different from the other episode, which is a good thing. Kind of switched it up on us, but definitely exciting. And yeah, we're gonna get on to is Russia next? I'm gonna go. 1 second. Let me go to the playlist here. Okay, hold on. I got no. Okay, not Russia. It's we're back to Wellington strikes. Okay, so Russia's not yet, but looks like we're getting there. But anyways, guys, thanks again for watching. Have a lot of fun doing these videos. Like I said, I try to get these out every day. I have a lot of fun, and I like to try to get one every day done. Just like my geography now, I just like my schedule. I have a lot of fun doing that, and doesn't. But anyways, guys, please hit the like and subscribe if you haven't, and I'll definitely catch you guys tomorrow. And on to the next mission, on to the next part of Napoleon. Not much Napoleon in this one. Napoleon was off having fun, with his girlfriends or his new wife or making babies, and so. But maybe we could have been a little different in Spain if Napoleon was there. You never know. But I don't think so with the guerrilla tactics. But maybe we'll see a return of Napoleon, and the next episode we'll find out. But anyways, thank you guys for watching once again, and I'll definitely catch you guys in future videos. Thank you.